It's 21 April, and we're pleased to talk to Deacon Ty Smithdeal. And I notice here we have a charming statement about flowers on the altar given to the glory of God by Deborah in celebration of birthdays for Bessie, Ty, Trent Little, and Thanksgiving for our many blessings.
That's right.
So I wondered if you might reflect on your blessings.
Ooh, the Lord's been good to us.
Mm-hmm.
We've had times in our lives, like everybody else, when things weren't great.
Mm-hmm.
But we have always maintained that the Lord's going to take care of us. And to this time, He always has. He shared many blessings with us. We've got a wonderful, large family. We have 6 children.
Mm-hmm.
Our daughter Betsy that goes here is our youngest. We have 18 grandchildren and presently 4 great-grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. But you're expecting more.
Well, I certainly can't see any stopping that. And they all are sharing good health and wonderful careers, and we're just so blessed.
Tell us where the Smithdeals are from. It's an interesting name. What kind of name is
Yeah, they're
Smithdeal?
originally from Bavaria.
Oh,
They
so it's spelled different?
left there and came to, well, in Austria, actually, in a section called Moravia,
Mm-hmm.
which is where the Moravians
Yeah.
came from. And they left there and went to overland to France and over then to England and departed from England with by ship and came to this country and landed in Philadelphia and came overland then down to North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they settled in Davie County,
Mm-hmm.
a little town called Advance.
Mm-hmm.
Most anybody else look at that word would say that's Advance, and, but in
North
Davie
Carolina.
County that's Advance.
Yeah.
And my great grands are still buried. They're buried there. My dad was born there,
Mm-hmm.
and then moved into Winston-Salem, so which is where I'm from.
Mm-hmm. So, Western North Carolina, Reformed Protestant?
I'm sorry.
Reformed Protestant, or?
Yes, and they came and I don't know what the original brothers, what church they attended
Mm-hmm.
before they came, but when they came and settled, they settled first in the Granite, Granite Falls,
Uh-huh.
and attended a Lutheran church, and that's where their records are.
Mm-hmm.
Still in that church. They then became Methodist, and I grew up Methodist.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a charter member of the Methodist Church in Winston, Ardmore Methodist, and he was born into the Methodist Church in Advance. And, so my first wife was English, and so that's how I came into the Episcopal Church.
Through the Church of England.
That's right.
Uh-huh. How did you meet an English wife?
Well, she was born there. Her dad was a soldier there in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got married to a local girl, and she was born there, and then actually came to this country on a Liberty ship with her mother as they brought the wives over after the war.
Uh-huh.
The Zebulon B. Vance, which was named for a North Carolina native.
Yeah. Confederate general and governor. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Well, you made your way into the Episcopal Church through marriage. you also made your way into the deaconate, or the diaconate, I guess. So how did you do that?
Diaconate. When I first got out of the Navy in 1965, I came home to Winston-Salem, went in business with my dad in the real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't really happy with the real estate business. I don't like being cooped up in an office, and I'd rather be outside doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So I prayed about it and thought about it, and finally decided that the Lord was calling me to be a hospital chaplain.
Hmm.
And so one day I finally went over to Baptist Hospital, as it was then called, and now it's North Carolina Wake Forest Baptist Hospital. But I went in and in the lobby and was waiting in line at the information desk to find out where the chaplain's office was. And while I was standing there, I thought, I don't have time for this. I've got 2 babies at home. I've got a new job, trying to make a living, trying to make a way for my family, and I haven't got time for this. And I turned around and left.
Oh.
And for 35 years, God kept calling me,
Yes.
and I wouldn't answer the phone.
Is it literally 35 years?
That's right. And so finally,
And in the meantime, you continued to sell real estate?
I did for a little while, and then I started building houses and
Mm-hmm.
several other. I was always kind of an entrepreneur, and I kind of did what was fun at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyhow, finally I got involved in the church. I was always in the church, but not always as involved as I was later. And so I taught Sunday school, and then did. As a matter of fact, I taught Sunday school here at Garden City Chapel when I was about 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a house, my family had a house there. Anyhow, I went to the I was taking a course through University of the South we were taking it up at Brown Summit, North Carolina, which is where the Diocese of North Carolina's Conference Center was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a weekend thing. We'd go up there on a 1 weekend a month, and so I was up there, and on Friday night I was awake all night long, and struggling with that question: what am I supposed to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
I woke up in the morning about 6 o'clock, and it was clear as a bell that God was calling me to the diaconate. Later I told Bishop Curry about it, and he said, yeah, that was wrestling with angels.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyhow, that day I went along, I didn't say anything to anybody. And that evening, after the course finished, I was talking to a close friend. There were 8 or 10 of us staying over in one of the fireplace lounges, and we were singing country music. Somebody had a guitar. We were singing country music and having a couple of drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got late, and I told Vicky Weason, who was a priest, I said, I gotta go to bed, it's late, I didn't get any sleep last night. So we walked back across the parking lot, and there's a deep ravine right there, maybe 10, 12 feet deep, and there's a wooden bridge over it. And we got in the middle of that bridge, on the way over to the rooms where the whole motel part was, and I said, stopped, and I said, I gotta tell you something. And she said, what is that? And I said, I'm pretty sure God's calling me to the diaconate.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, what the heck took you so long?
Uh-huh.
Didn't use that word,
Mhm, right.
but she said, we've known that for years. And
We being other priests or
yeah,
members of the
and so she said, well, let me tell you something. And I said, what? She said, I had my call to the priesthood standing on this bridge.
Oh no, yeah. That's yeah.
That kind of took my breath away.
Uh-huh.
So anyhow, that I entered the process, and in the Diocese of North Carolina, after I got ordained in 2004,
Mm-hmm.
and I served 3 churches there, and then Bishop Curry made us retire at 72.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned 72 and I retired.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't like it, still don't like that rule, but I did that. And I was retired for 9 years. In the meantime, I thought, well, I don't think God's through with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went over to the hospital in Gastonia and got a job as a hospital chaplain in the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
And the ICU units. And so I was a hospital chaplain for 6 years there before we moved down here.
Mm-hmm.
And then Will one Sunday said to me, why don't you think about helping me out here a little bit? And I said, well, I'm retired, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I've been retired for 9 years. And I'm kind of liking it. And I think I'm getting pretty good at it. And he said, well, think about it. And I did, and I finally said, well, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And he said, well, I'll just, come in the office a couple of days a week and spend a couple of hours and take care of the people calling in for assistance. And that's, I said, yeah, that's fine. That didn't last long, and he said, how about doing the healing service on Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, I can do that. Then he said, well, how about, serving, helping me serve communion, and it's now I'm full-time, and it's the way it works, and I'm loving it, so I can't deny that. I missed it terribly. And I've enjoyed it here. It's a good congregation, good bunch of folks.
Mm-hmm. Where did you serve in North Carolina?
All of it was in the Charlotte area.
Uh-huh.
My first church was an African-American mission.
Mm-hmm.
Served there for a year with a priest that's in this diocese now, Father Mike By,
Uh-huh.
who's up at St. Bartholomew's in Hartsville now.
Uh-huh.
That's interim. I loved serving with Mike, and then I wasn't ordained at that point. I was interning there,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got ordained, and Murdoch Smith was a priest at St. Martin's in Charlotte downtown.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were St. Martin's, and there's right many people from St. Martin's who are here with us now, right?
That's right. And so I served there for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they had 5 clergy. They had 4 priests and me.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it in my time there. We all were on a regular rotation preaching, and I was in the regular rotation with everybody else, and I did quite a lot of the hospital visitations and that sort of thing, and all the services, and well, just everything in the church, really. And then I left there. When Murdoch left, he got rid of all of us. We had, it's sort of, you do that so that the new priests coming in can choose their own crowd.
Right, yeah.
So I left, and I went to work with Sarah Holler at St. Mark's in Huntersville, up near Lake Norman, and which was closer to my house. And so I was there for 2 years, and turned 72 and had to retire. That was the extent of my service in different churches. I did on the all of that period of time, though. I worked during the day as a day job with the Urban Ministry Center in Charlotte with the homeless, and worked with mostly folks that were addicted, and that's a challenging occupation, but I enjoyed that. And then my wife worked with folks with HIV and AIDS. She was actually Province 4 representative for the chair of the AIDS Commission.
This is Denver, right?
Yeah, and so for 11 years she was chair of that committee, and we put on the one of the largest AIDS retreats in the nation, up at Canoga. I've often said she was more of a deacon than I was. And, we really enjoyed that ministry, and we still see a lot of those folks. And it was a retreat where we didn't. It was for people with the virus, and their caregivers, and their friends or family. We didn't know who was who. And but it was we'd have about 365 every year for a weekend, and that's all Canoga will hold. And so it was a lot of fun. Province 4 is the 9 southern states, and
none of them known for being especially tolerant of people with AIDS.
I remember a story that Mike Bye told me, Father Bye. When AIDS first came to the public light, Mike knew of a man who came in contact with the virus and had full-blown AIDS, and was in the hospital. And Mike said he went to visit him, and the nurses and all told him you've got to gown up and put on gloves and respirator helmet and all. And Mike said, I don't think I'm going to do that. And they said, oh, well, you've got to. That's for your own protection. And he didn't do it. And he went in and saw the man. And when he got to the bedside, he reached out and took the man's hand. And the man started crying. And he said, that's the first touch of human flesh I've had in, I don't know, a long period of time.
We didn't know much about how AIDS spread, and there were, my memory is there were really preposterous assumptions even the story you just told of putting on all that gear,
Fear of the unknown.
and a hospital was enforcing that.
Yeah.
When you had the big conference at Canoga, had our knowledge gotten greater? Did we know more about how AIDS spread?
We got involved with that. My wife got involved, Deborah, because she had a friend in high school who contracted the virus. And his family wouldn't acknowledge that he even had it. And he moved to California, and when he got really sick, he came back home. They never accepted it, never accepted him back, and he died pretty much alone. And that upset Deborah. Something terrible.
Well, that's upsetting.
And so she went to, she's from Mooresville, North Carolina, which
Another
is
place,
north
yeah.
of Charlotte. And so that's in Iredell County. And so she went to Statesville, this county seat, and went to the health department and said, I want to find out about any volunteer opportunities in the field of AIDS. And the health department told her, we don't have anything because we don't have any AIDS in our county.
Yeah.
Preposterous.
Yeah, it is. That's just Carolina in that era.
So anyway, she found a way to get involved.
Well, bless her. Well, the other thing was when you had your conference, we've come a long way now to treating AIDS, and it's not always an immediate death sentence.
That's and that's the problem now, Jack. Really, all of the treatment and the programs that are set up were all set up for people to die with AIDS.
Right, and you can live with it for a long time.
And so now that people are living with it, the program's not working.
Yeah.
You know.
Is Deborah still involved?
We are, but not through that program anymore. And since we're not there,
And you're retired. Yeah.
But we had a friend. Deborah was particularly close to him. A fellow from Mobile, Alabama, came to the conference every year, and he had the virus since before it had a name. And he's one of those lucky people. His C count would just stay good, and he would have spells when it would kind of reappear and take a little toll here and there, and then it would go back in kind of in remission, And whenever Calvin came, he had it had taken a toll on him over 30 years, and has lost all his teeth. He'd had both elbows replaced, and things like that. And it used to be, they used to call each other, and they would talk for an hour, like every week. And so we were up at Canoga, and it was on Sunday, and they were getting ready to get on the bus to go back to Alabama. Calvin was in a wheelchair at that time, and we were out on the porch, and Calvin rolled out there and say goodbye, and he got up out of that wheelchair,
And stood up?
got up,
Uh-huh.
and picked Deborah up and,
Oh.
and kissed her goodbye,
Uh-huh.
and kissed me goodbye then,
Uh-huh.
and they loved her. They loved her. We never did anything but treat them with respect,
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Well, what Jesus would have done.
it's.
Mhm.
I mean, it's all you can do. It's all they expect. It's
Mhm.
all they want,
Mhm.
and just to be included and be treated like a human being.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, there were 2 priests that I knew that contracted AIDS, and one closet gay, and I respected him. You just couldn't be gay and be a priest, and I respected him and was sorry he had to hide his true self. He was a very fine priest. This is in Miami, and then there wasn't much could be done. He died rather quickly. Another was Lutheran, and we were attending his church because this is part of North Carolina with no Episcopalians, and he was hemophiliac and had to do blood transfusions, and of course caught AIDS through the blood transfusion. And we had talked often. I would ask him, "Don't you feel like this was kind of unfair?" And he says, "What? No. You know, there's no. I'm not superior to anybody else who got it through a needle because they're an addict or because they were having a homoerotic experience. It's just I have to get transfusions.
Yeah.
And heroin addicts have to have heroin, and gay people have to have sex. So I've got it because I have to. It came because I had to. So that helped me a great deal. Just him walking. But of course, see, he's the one suffering, and he's counseling me."
That we found to be true in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. That the suffering brought some kind of knowledge.
Yeah. We had a group of folks in Greensboro. There's a house there called RAIN,
Mm-hmm.
and it stands for Regional AIDS Interfaith Network.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's just a place that's in a house pretty near downtown, where folks with the virus can come and be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They feed lunch there. They have all sorts of activities, things that going on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Cassidy runs it, and a friend of ours, and we got involved with them, and we would go up there and help serve lunch, or and we met a lot of the guys there,
Mm-hmm.
and so it got to the point where we'd go for the weekend, and we were taking some courses at Trinity Episcopal,
Mm-hmm.
and so Deborah would catch the train in Kannapolis. I'd drive her over to Kannapolis. She'd catch the train to Greensboro, and a fellow from Rain, James, a little African-American guy that was a wonderful person, would pick her up at the train station
Mm-hmm.
and carry her to the Rain house, and she'd spend the Friday afternoon and all there with the guys, and then I'd drive up Friday evening,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd stay and take our courses on Saturday, and then come home. And James was married to another James,
Mm-hmm.
and when James passed away, his last wish was that his ashes would be scattered at Canuga,
Well,
where we had the retreat, and we did that, and had a little memorial service for him up there during the retreat. Very powerful. I have to tell you a story. There was a little Baptist lady, African American lady. She was close to 80, named Miss Mary, and Miss Mary would come to the retreat, and she loved to sing in the choir. We had kind of pickup choir, great choir, and we had Bishop Curry as our keynote speaker 3 different years. He loved that place, and he loved the retreat. On Friday night, he'd do his first session, and he would preach for about an hour and a half. And I mean preach.
Yes. Yeah.
And the people were mostly, well, I'd say probably 70%, 75% African American. And they were finishing his sentences for him.
Oh.
And they were slain in the spirit. Get slain in the spirit, they'd pass out in the aisles.
Right.
And Michael would walk and just step over them and keep preaching. And he
What an image.
came back, sat down next to me the first year. Came back, sat down next to me, put his arm around me, and he said, "Brother, this is a preaching crowd." And I said, "Well, you've been holding out on us white folks." I said, "You ain't never given us anything but white folk preaching." But he did love it, and he told me that Sunday after the celebration of Eucharist, we were both in the sacristy. And he said, "Brother, if you think y'all might want to have me back up here," I said, "why don't you call the office tomorrow?" And see when my calendar's open. And we did, and so he did, came back 2 more times, 2 more weekends. It was wonderful. But Miss Mary, he was preaching on a Saturday, and he started preaching about Roots, the movie. And he got to the part where Kucha Kendi was being whipped, tied to a tree. We were in Boniface Hall, and had all the doors open down the sides, and Michael was acting like they're looking out at a tree out the side door, and he was really being animated about that flogging. And he was so intense about it that Miss Mary started screaming, "Don't hit him no more. Don't hit him no more." And she could see him out there. Powerful, powerful ministry.
Now, I always ask this particular question of a certain kind of person. Southerners tend toward the right wing, and they're not especially tolerant of terribly much.
Right.
So here you are, very involved with black people, very involved with gay people. Where did that come from? You didn't get it from these communities you grew up in.
My family, I grew up in an upper middle class family. Very, very fortunate. We never lacked anything. But my parents taught me to treat everybody equal. Probably the greatest thing they ever taught me.
And this came out of Methodist.
Mhm.
Methodist. I worked for Methodist a long time, and I didn't always understand them, but I did. They gave so much. They were giving people,
Yeah.
serving people.
Well, the Episcopal Church came out of the Methodist
Mm-hmm.
Church. I mean,
Well, we would say they came out of us, but
the Wesley brothers never.
they were buried in their vestments.
They were still Methodists.
Mm-hmm.
Never changed,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's where liturgy came out of. Methodist is method.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They had a method to their service,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's where our liturgy is a method.
Mm-hmm. So the family, but also church, is the source of this toleration and liberalism, if you wish to call it liberalism.
Jack, I think I'm going to explain that best by telling you what my personal belief is.
Mm-hmm.
God didn't give me the job of judging.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God, because I'd be terrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
God gave me the job of just loving everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and He'll take care of that judging part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about it. And so I try to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Deborah and I were talking about that the other day, and how we were with some people that were pretty judgmental.
Yeah, yeah. It's in the air, yeah.
And it bothered us both.
Mm-hmm.
And we try not to do that.
It sets up a weird dilemma because we don't want to judge them for judging.
Yeah.
Which puts us in a lousy debating position.
Yep, you're right. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not judge people.
Mm-hmm. But it's true. Yeah.
Because they put it right out there for you.
Yeah.
You know. But we were yesterday. We went to a bar over on the beach that a fellow we know's birthday, and they were having a little gathering for him there. And there's all kind of people there.
Mm-hmm.
We know all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care how much money they got or what kind of job they got or, you know, they're people.
Mm-hmm.
And just as long as they are, treat people with respect, that's...
Well, that's asking a lot because often it does
It
not happen.
is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's been said to me many times over the years that God won't give you more than you can handle.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But He's pushing it.
he goes right up to the limit. Yeah.
He pushes it.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the ways, I think, that He sees how far we can go.
Mm-hmm.
He or she.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't know too much about God's gender.
No, I scare people to death sometimes in a sermon when I say he or she.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did Deborah become so liberal?
I'm sorry?
Deborah, how did she become so liberal on things?
I think her whole outlook on life and people changed when her friend got AIDS and died alone. And she didn't know he was back from California, and didn't know until after he died that he was there.
Oh. So she couldn't help him, but she's helped everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. She's got a big heart. And she always is saying, I don't think I'm doing enough.
Rita says that, and I'll say, but you're always doing stuff, you know.
She has touched so many lives. Just like me telling you about Calvin, and you know, those guys would every year when they came to the retreat, the first thing they do when they got there is find her, you know, and they'd do anything in the world for her, anything she asked them to do. And we had fun doing that, and we met some really great folks, and still are in contact with quite a lot of them. They call us or write us or send us Christmas cards or whatever, you know. And then I still have a lot of folks that I knew from the urban ministry when I worked there. My job was actually, job title was employment counselor for the homeless. But in actual fact, I mostly ended up working with folks that were addicted, chemically dependent. And that's almost impossible to treat their chemical dependency when they're if they have like no whatever bipolar disorder or whatever, and they work against each other.
Yeah,
so you can't.
And some of the medications make it worse.
That's right. So
the drugs definitely make it worse.
It's a really tough thing to do. But I consider some of those folks some of my best friends. I had one guy from Lake City, South Carolina. Mom was a school teacher there for years and years and years. Got a brother that's in the FBI, and a sister that works at the head of the Human Resources Department Hospital in Florence. And Leonard is chemically dependent. Can't quit. I tried.
We know remarkably little about how that works.
Oh gosh.
It's not willpower, it's something else going on.
Well, if I don't get to preach much here, but if you'll probably hear me preach a sermon about it once, if I do. We have a son who's chemically dependent and was in active addiction for 17 years. And that's how I got involved in that part of the ministry. In 1998, December the 28th, he called me, and I didn't know where he was. I didn't know for years at a time where he was, or if he was alive or dead. And he called me and said, Dad, I've got to have some help. And I said, well, yeah. I said, where are you? I'll come right now and get you.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm in Winston, and he said, but I'm fine till in the morning. And I said, okay, I'll come in the morning. So I hung up the phone, and so about 3 o'clock in the morning, Deborah woke me up and said, somebody's in our driveway.
Mm.
It was cold. It was a cold night. And, I went and got up, I went to the door and looked out, and there was a car there I didn't recognize. And so I went out there, and it was our son.
Mm.
And he'd gotten cold in the car, and I cranked it up. That's what woke her up. And he was so drunk, he couldn't stand up.
Mm.
And how in the world he drove from Winston-Salem
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to Lake Norman
Yeah.
without killing himself or somebody else.
You know, God takes care of drunks, I think. Mm-hmm.
I picked him up, carried him in the house, and put him in the bed. And I was so behind the door about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called my best friend, who was a priest, and I said, I need to know what's a psychiatrist number
Mm-hmm.
in Charlotte. And he said, what do you need a psychiatrist for? And I told him. He said, you don't need a psychiatrist. He said, call Ken. Ken was a member of our parish.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it, but he was a recovering alcoholic.
Need an AA or an NA group to. Mm-hmm.
And so I called Ken. And he had a business, small business of his own,
Mm-hmm.
about 10 minutes from our house. And told him what was going on. I said, I don't know why I'm calling you, but that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Mm.
Closed his business. And 10 minutes later, Jesus Christ walked through my door.
Mm-hmm.
So I got him up, Reed, my son, got him up. And Ken said, let me talk to him alone. I said, okay. They sat down in the living room and talked a minute. A few minutes, Ken said, bring me a phone. Carried him a phone in there. And he dialed a number and handed it to Reed, and Reed checked himself into rehab.
Mm-hmm.
Mercy Hospital in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
And stayed there 4 days. At that time, he was on alcohol, he was on heroin,
Mm-hmm.
he was on Quaaludes, he was on coke,
Mm-hmm.
Everything known to man.
This is a war in your body. A lot of those things counteract each other.
And so after 4 days, most rehab is 3 days, but with that, your body becomes so dependent on alcohol that
Mm-hmm.
it takes 4 days instead of 3. And I picked him up and we carried him straight to Monroe and put him in First Step residential program.
Mm-hmm.
Stayed there for 6 weeks. And he got in Narcotics Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And at the church that was my last church at St. Mark's was his home group. And it was funny, he said one of the first nights he went to the meeting, we also had an R-non meeting
Mm-hmm.
in there in another room.
Mm-hmm.
And he came home and he said, man, those people scared me to death. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I got in the wrong room.
Uh-huh.
And he said, all of what those people, they were telling about what we all had done to them.
Mm-hmm.
He said, it scared me to death.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah.
Well, you don't. I'm recovering, and you don't know what you're doing to people. You really don't.
Now,
Yeah.
so, at any rate,
That's funny and sad too.
so he ended up getting clean, and he went back. He went to Central Piedmont Community College in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Got his 2-year degree in substance abuse counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Appalachian
Mm-hmm.
and graduated, got his bachelor's in psychology and substance abuse counseling,
Mm-hmm.
and started teaching some at Appalachian.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to work at the New River Health Project up there as substance abuse counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went back to University of North Carolina, had a program
Mm-hmm.
that they were doing off campus and doing it at Wake Forest, a master's degree program.
Mm-hmm.
First time they'd done it, so he got in that, got his master's. New River Health Project went bankrupt,
Mm-hmm.
and so he moved up to Silva, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
in the mountains
Yeah,
near
I know it. Yeah.
Tennessee line there. Went to work up there for another recovery program, and became the clinical director for them. Had 120 counselors working for him,
Mm-hmm.
and 9 counties, western counties.
Mm-hmm.
He is now the assistant administrator of the Cherokee Nation Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
My kid that I wasn't sure would live to be 30
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
still goes to an NA meeting
Mm-hmm.
every night.
Mm-hmm.
He's been clean now for 25 years, 3 months, and what is today? 23 days.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's counting,
Yeah.
but God works miracles.
Yeah, I was thinking we got this, when we speak of blessings, and here we would start with this horrible story, and it is a blessing. Did you ever encounter Romulus Linney? Romulus Linney?
That doesn't ring a bell.
He's a spiritual writer, literary fellow, many books of poetry. He writes about Jesus. And a lot of these, there's a lot of that literature I don't like, but he's really just super. And his Jesus is always with drunks, and always with drug addicts, and always with prostitutes, and doesn't really fix them.
Yeah,
He's just with them.
yeah,
And so some people find this sacrilegious, but I found it as spiritual reading as I have seen. He a nun, a literary nun that I knew, we did a book of her poems. I used to publish books. And she introduced us, and he did some readings for us at St. Andrews in North Carolina. And I was a lot of it's hilarious. Because like it or not, drunks are funny in the middle of doing things. It's hilarious, as well as very deeply moving. And I've seen, ever since then, this was early 80s, I've seen Jesus that way. I've seen Jesus as not so much fixing, not curing, just there with you.
when we started out We were part of the founding members of the church in Mooresville,
Mm-hmm.
St. Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started it, we didn't have a priest, so we had all kinds of different priests.
No official priest here for long years. Yeah.
So we were meeting in a Chinese restaurant.
It's wonderful. Yes.
It was wonderful.
Oh, yes.
We had this magnificent mural of the Great Wall of China.
With the
across
great
behind
dragon and the red and the gold, and yeah.
Had a
Marvelous.
great big statue of Buddha when you came in the door.
Uh-huh.
We had a supply priest that was kind of our steady supply priest, Joe Coulter. Joe was a great guy. But Joe would tell you, he said, I was a drunk.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I wasn't just a drunk.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fall down in the gutter drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe had burned a lot of brain cells
Mm-hmm.
over the years before he got clean. And so I was a sacristy rat.
Mm-hmm.
I own that easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would almost always the acolyte, myself or one other fellow,
Mm-hmm.
and the lay reader and the LEM and then whatever it was, altar guild. And so Joe would, in the middle of the liturgy, lose his place. And he'd just start turning pages. And I'd have to get up and go over there and turn him back to the right place. And, here you are, Joe. And he'd start over. But he was a great guy. And he was really good for St. Patrick. And it was, we moved from there to an old A&P grocery store, which was now a Y. And we meet in the basketball court. And they didn't have any furnishings much. So I bought a truck and I borrowed a trailer, closed-in trailer, like the landscape people use, and put it behind my truck, and we put all of our, well, there was another church, St. Catherine's, closed. It was a plant that didn't work out. And they had a lot of chairs and tables and stuff. And so we got all that stuff, and then we put it all in the trailer. And I had a friend that owned a storage lot, mini storage. And he let me park my truck and trailer in that thing. And so every Sunday I'd go to the storage lot and get my truck and you'd go to the church, to the A&P and unload and set up church. It was wonderful. You'd have loved it, Jack.
Yeah, the Chinese restaurant, the A&P, the many stories, that's church.
We had a 8-foot table, plastic table, but it wasn't high enough to be an altar.
Yes.
And so we had all the chalices and patens and all of that stuff in an army ammunition box, wooden ammunition boxes. That's where we stored them.
I remember them well, yeah.
So we had a couple of those. And so they worked out just right. They were exactly the right height to set the table on top of. And so we'd unload them and we'd set the table there and set up church. And one of the defining moments of St. Patrick's was once the Y didn't trust us to have a key.
Yes.
We were not trustworthy, And so we'd have to pay a white person to come on Sunday and open the building and sit there and close up the building. But one Sunday, the person didn't show.
Oh,
I got in the truck and trailer and we couldn't get in the building. It was in the strip mall.
uh-huh.
So we said, well, we got everything we need on this side of the door.
Uh-huh. Sitting in the parking lot?
Oh, we just sat up under the, it was under the awning down the walkway.
Yes.
And people drove by and honked and, you know. Well, we went right on with church. And then after that, we moved to a school.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there for a while, and then we bought 23 acres of land. And right next to the hospital in Mooresville.
Mm-hmm.
And we built the church, and it's a real modern, contemporary church. It's basically a half a cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you take a cathedral
Mm-hmm.
and just cut it in half.
Yes.
And it was beautiful. We didn't have any permanent furniture. It's all movable.
Mm-hmm.
So we could set up any way we wanted to set up.
Mm-hmm. Almost like we have over here.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And
I've come to prefer that to pews,
yeah,
to be able to move chairs around.
Yeah, I miss that congregation. That's the congregation that I actually entered the process from.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't get to go back there very often, but when we still lived up there, some of my, particularly the First African American Church, used to invite me back to preach once in a while. And St. Patrick's did too. I'd go, and it's good to go back and see people. You know?
It is. It is. Well, we, speaking of church, people are gathering, so I guess we should let you change clothes.
Probably.
And
Yeah.
I've enjoyed, you have shared your blessings, and appreciate that. And I think Marcia and I will speak to someone in charge about letting you give us a sermon. I expect it would be amusing to us, and enlightening too. So thank you, sir.
You're very, very welcome, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.